right, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to Monsters of Design, the podcast where we use monsters to think about some of the problems we encounter in the design world. On today's episode, we talk with Chelsea Kinley, a product designer at YML. John, tell us a little bit about Chelsea.
So Chelsea is a talented designer. I work with her at YML, product design agency we're both at. And, you know, I've had a really awesome time collaborating with her on a lot of projects for a number of clients. And through working with her, I actually found out that she is a very talented painter as well. And in the way that we've worked together in the past, I think we've both sort of encountered this monster known as the hoverer that we're going to be talking about. And in some ways, I've probably been a little bit of a hoverer to her in working together. So I thought it'd be really awesome to bring her on and talk about this monster and to see if we could make some sense of it. So yeah, today has been a little crazy. It's a Monday.
It's pure chaos. So there's a couple things that are happening. John forgot to press record, and then there was a spider that I lost my shit about and derailed the entire conversation so I can fret and scream. And the spider returned several times. But through all that, and despite all that, we managed to have a somewhat productive conversation. We talk about Attack on Titan. And we talk about how to have a relationship with this monster known as the hoverer. How do you have a relationship with this thing? You know, not just as an artist, but as a designer and a working professional. Mm-hmm. And Chelsea offers some really invaluable insight that I'm going to be fucking thinking about for a minute now. And with that, I think let's get into it. I have this contact lens that's copping a lot of attitude. So there is like maybe a 70% chance this thing is just going to eject from my eye at some point and like land on my, I don't know. I have this fear it's going to like land on my cheek or something. Anyways, so if I'm just like making weird blinky faces, it's because of the contact lenses in my eyes.
I'm just going to think that you're winking at me and I'm like, I got you. I'm on board.
Eyelashes are a monster. Mine are like 17 feet long. They're actually like, they could functionally be like oars on a boat. Like they're just like that's a lot. So with contact lenses and really long eyelashes, it's just, look, it's painful to be this beautiful. But it's pain I'm willing to put up with. Anyways, Chelsea.
Oh, hi.
Welcome to Monsters of Design.
Hello. Happy to be here.
How you doing today?
I am doing good. I just had a busy day with work, so I'm wrapping that up, and I'm really excited to be talking with you guys about this new monster.
Yeah, I saw the Attack on... Okay, yes, We'll before we get to Attack on Titan. I mean, maybe we just dive into Attack on Titan right now. I don't know. Is it worth?
That's the whole podcast,
right? It's just like, so one of the things we want to try out here on the Mod Pod is asking people about their favorite monsters, and it could be anything. It could be a monster that we see in film or television a monster we've read about, a monster that's in like an old school fable, any sort of monster. So Chelsea, with that in mind, what's your favorite monster?
Okay, so Zeke is my favorite monster. And if you are an Attack on Titans fan, Zeke is actually the Bigfoot Sasquatch Titan, and he's crazy large. He has like a monstrous throwing arm, and it seems like he's like super calculated and doesn't really care about anything else but his main goal. They start to cover like, how he even came to be a Titan and like who he was as a child and how that affected him and how he became who he is today. And to me, I love stories like that because I like to relate with the bad guy in a little bit. I want to know why you're a bad guy, like apply logic to it for some reason. And it's just so freaking satisfying, the story that they gave for him. Like the writers, kudos to them because it's amazing. I can't wait to see how it ends. Like I'm literally waiting on my toes, but I heard that it's not coming until 2022. And I'm going to throw a boot.
So I'm going to zoom out for a second. So for people who don't know, Attack on Titan, so I've only watched the first quarter of the first season. I just started it. And I know, but I know enough. Because the main dude, okay, I don't want to spoil things. But I think like 9 or 10 episodes in, the main dude, a twist happens with him. And, okay, so, but to zoom out a little bit.
Spoilers.
I know. So, Attack on Titan imagines this world where essentially the last remnants of humanity are in these fortress cities that is basically in like a series of circles within each other, and each perimeter of the circle is a barrier. And in this world, humanity is being attacked by these massive human-esque kaiju titans that are like just terrifying renditions of humans. Like, and it's so much more than that. They're like human-esque, but they're like huge, and they have these like sickly grins on their faces, and they just will eat people. And so it's kind of like what happened if humanoid kaiju attacked Ba Sing Se from Airbender. Like,
oh yes,
kind of like that. And it is so. Chelsea, your choice is amazing because those things, the Titans are terrifying.
Yes, and it's crazy because, and I really want you to get deeper into it because then you find out like where these Titans actually come from, who they actually are. There's differences in the Titans. Some are brainless and some are intelligent, but they're all like terrorizing these walls, right? So once they get into the walls, they are hungry, right? So who else are they going to feed on other than the people? So now the people who are inside of these walls have to figure out a way to stay safe, to rebuild their wall, and to protect from future Titans because they have no way of identifying, how they operate. They have no way of identifying where they're even coming from. A lot of these people were born inside these walls for like generations. So they don't even know, if there's a world outside of them. A lot of them haven't even seen the water or the ocean or anything like that. And so it's literally a crazy story that you just have to watch.
It's like, and you have to see it.
It's 4 seasons right now. It's 4 seasons, and there's a lot of episodes in each season, and it's so rich in story that it leaves you hanging on the end of your seat. I've been following since, I want to say, way back in 2012, 2013, like one of those early years. I've been following it, just waiting for each season to come out. And now, like, the last final season came out, and I didn't want it to be like another Game of Thrones, right? Whereas, like, you kind of been building up all this time, and then they kind of let you down at the last minute. I was hoping it wasn't, but it's turning out to be even sweeter. That is great. And then they only gave it to us in halves. So now I'm waiting for that second half.
And then that's it. And then it's wrapped up.
Then it's done.
Oh my God.
But it's wrapping up nicely, so.
Good. Okay, John, talk to us.
Yeah, you're probably wondering why that entire segment where Brian and Chelsea were nerding out on Titans, I was dead silent. I was actually in the room, the digital room.
So yeah, he forgot to do some important recording things for his end. So it was just me and dear Chelsea talking about Attack on Titan, which is honestly not a bad way to start my Monday evening. So, but we'll link it. Anyways, Chelsea,
Hi.
thank you. Hi. So we were talking about Attack on Titan, and just an overall like vibe check. Like, you're in Atlanta.
Yes.
What's happening in Atlanta? Because it's like sunny right now. I'm in Santa Cruz. It's like 70, not a cloud in the sky. What's the picture on your end of things?
So I think we're in hurricane season over here on the East Coast. So it's been a lot of rain lately. It's crazy because it's both dark clouds and clear sky outside, but the wind is like blowing like crazy. So it's been knocking out like power and the internet and things like that. I'm like, no, please. But yeah, it's just really rainy over here lately. Hopefully we get past that soon and get back to more sun because nobody wants to deal with rain during the summertime.
Is it humid?
Very. You've never been to Atlanta. It's very thick and humid out here.
My housemate's from Savannah, or lived in Savannah for a long time, and now she's here, and she tells me stories, and I'm like, I don't think my body could survive humidity.
It's bad. I'm not even going to front you. It is bad and thick, but I've also lived in California, like Southern California, where it was just dry heat. And to me, that sucks the soul out of you more than, moisturized heat, I would say.
Moisturizing heat.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Go for it, Brian. You go.
Oh, I was just going to intro you, man. I was just going to say, we're all gathered here today to talk about the hoverer, who is modeled after my dear, dear, dear friend, King Ghidorah, a Godzilla villain who is a three-headed dragon. And so, John, walk us through what's the hoverer about?
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of the hovering art director. There's a Tumblr blog about it, hovering art directors, hovering creative directors, and there's all these pictures of one or many art directors, clients, project managers, whoever it really is, hovering behind a designer while they're at their computer, telling them to do different things, giving them various feedback. And it's something you see. We've all seen it, especially before the pandemic when we were all in the same room working together. We've all experienced it as designers coming up in our career. And, collaboration is really good. Collaboration is wonderful. But when you are in that environment, it doesn't really feel super collaborative. It sort of feels like you're literally just, a hand on a mouse and a hand on Control-C and Control-V, and someone is just telling you what to do. And so that is the hover. That is exactly what that is. And the reason why it was modeled after one of Brian's many monster appreciations is because of those three heads. And it always feels like it is more than one person because people quickly join in. And so that definitely represents this monster really well. And what's interesting about this is we've just gone through this past year and a half or so where a lot of us, especially designers, have been working remotely. And so that means we've been working through things like Slack, Figma, Sketch, a lot of these really collaborative programs. And I think we're still experiencing it. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to talk to Chelsea because she is a product designer. We both work at the same studio. I'm repeating that because this is the stuff that I was saying not realizing I didn't hit the record button earlier. So yeah, Chelsea and I are both designers. We work at YML, which is a product design agency, and we're in Figma a lot. And in Figma, you get to see all the cursors moving around. I'm pretty sure 99% of the designers listening to this know what we're talking about. But
and for those who don't, what's Figma?
So yeah, for those who don't, because I know that we're kind of bringing in people who are like film industry folk and a bunch of other people, because we all sort of operate with this design mentality. But for those who have not worked in Figma, it's basically like, picture yourself working in Photoshop. You got your cursor, you're moving things around, but then you have like 30 other cursors moving around doing things in that same artboard. That's Figma, and it's really wonderful. But at times, when you're moving your cursor around and you see these 3 or 4 other cursors start to move in towards your cursor, and they're just sort of moving, it's exactly what it was like back in the old days when we were in the same office, and you'd have a few people start to pile in behind your desk and watch what you're doing, and it can be really intimidating, and it can kind of take that experience to a less creative space. So we thought it'd be awesome to talk about this monster, because there is a 1.0 and I think there's a 2.0 right now, and it's definitely something that we should address because it gets in our way of doing our best work. Chelsea, what was that like pre-pandemic? How did you experience that before, when you were actually more in the same office working with other people in a physical space?
Yeah, it was quite terrible, especially as a junior designer, someone who's not really too sure of herself yet, or your design decisions. It can be really intimidating, to have somebody hovering over you and judging every thing that you make, or every decision that you make, and like, well, you're not even giving me a chance to think. Hold on, let me get it out first. And so, like, when I was a junior designer, I used to work at this other agency, and I felt so overwhelmed by it. I couldn't sit at my desk and work because I felt like people were over my shoulders looking at me, or I was too afraid to fail and make a mistake. So I used to hide out in this little library nook area, take my laptop with me, and would just jam away, because it was where I could go to just think and get all my creative ideas out without that pressure. Now, in post-pandemic world, I've gotten a little bit smarter with how I manage the hover. And typically in Figma, I tend to cover up that little bar up at the top on my laptop with tape, so that way I don't see how many people are actually in here who could potentially be looking at me.
Wow, interesting.
Now,
okay.
That doesn't really change. It doesn't really change the fact if you see someone's cursor right there. So normally I usually have like another file open that's like a personal file, and I can go over there and just brain dump all my creative ideas out. And then when I'm like very sure of myself, I'll bring it back over like, oh yeah, I was already thinking about that. Don't worry about it. But I really don't like the hover, for the simple fact that it's really weird to be watched and creating something, right? Because it's normally coming from a place of instinct. And if somebody is judging that instinct, then you start to second guess yourself and your own instincts. And so I feel like that stifles my creativity. It gives me a sense of creative paralysis in a way, and I'm stuck. And normally, like, if I feel so overwhelmed, I have to step away from my laptop and come back when nobody else is there, which really sucks. I want to be able to collaborate with my teammates and bounce ideas off, but don't judge it prematurely when I'm still in brainstorming mode. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
But yeah, that's really how I dealt with it. And even then, outside of like me being in a creative field, I've experienced that in my other, past jobs, where you might have like a client or somebody who you're maybe like doing commissions for or something like that, who wants to be updated every 2 seconds, who wants to be part of the process, which normally I'm okay with. But if you're going to second guess and question every single thing, then you're not really hiring me for my skill and for, all the studying and knowledge that I have to bring to the table. Instead, you just want me to be your production. And I hate that.
Yeah.
I'm not a machine. I'm really not. So please, don't hover over me. Let me be my creative self.
I fully empathize. I don't work in Figma. as a copywriter, I typically work in Google Docs, but they're the same, very similar concepts. And it's so funny. I do the same thing when I know there's a lot of people in the doc. I go create my own little private doc, and I'm like, nobody can find me here.
I'm safe in my own bubble. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely relate with that.
It's interesting because I feel like no matter like where you're at or what you're working on, there's always going to be, with these collaborative tools, like you're saying, someone else that's working on it, because that ideally is how we're supposed to be collaborating on this stuff. But I think what's interesting is because we're finding that this really is like how we're working, we wouldn't have done this even though we've had these collaborative tools in the past when we were in the same space. It allowed us to do some of this remote work, but there was a lot of this like person-to-person work we were doing. There was sort of that built-in understanding. Like I almost feel like it was better before it is right now. Like maybe you'd have a couple people in the same room, but that required them to physically walk up, stand there, make themselves known, and that presence be behind you, when you could actually converse, you know what I mean, and have like a human interaction. But I think now the hover is almost worse because of this sort of like fully remote environment we're in. I think there are a ton of pluses to it. I actually think that working remote in this field is really wonderful. I really like it. I feel like I work with more people like yourself, Chelsea, who I wouldn't be able to work with, as directly as I would otherwise. And so I think it's really awesome. But I think this is one of those things that we kind of got to figure out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you have to do it with, I think, empathy. And so I think a way that we sort of work through this is, how does this affect you? What is this like? I know that it's easy to go, oh, we're working in silos if we're pulling stuff out, but I think we have to have that space. I feel the same, even when I'm just doing more of that art direction type of work and I'm pulling swipe in and finding, images to try to create a mood board or whatever. I'm doing that in Figma, and I'll copy and paste it for sure into those documents once I do it. So I do the exact same thing. I'm curious, like, if putting yourself in a situation, so say like, as you're moving through your career, you start to build that team up under yourself, knowing what you know now, how would you approach it if it was more of your team and you were managing people, and you'd be able to speak from, this place of experience in terms of what it's been like watching that hover take shape in this post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I default back to what you were saying, how, we are kind of missing that human interaction. When someone's hovering over you and not really saying anything, I feel like it's really counterproductive. I can't read your thoughts. Instead, I'm assuming all these things that could be the worst in reality. So if I were a creative director and, I'm working with a team, I would allot space for jam time, for heads down time, for you to get all your brainstorms out and not hover over you. Instead, why can't I just go ahead and make some ideas myself? We come together and we talk about it and collaborate together. Or like how sometimes we do within YML, is have those jam sessions where we can at least talk about it and give a little bit of that context, because without the context, you're just leaving comments here and there. It just feels like at this point now you're just telling me what to do rather than giving me the rationale behind it. So that way, not only can I make better decisions, down the road that apply to something similar, I just know that you just don't like it like this,
Where
I think having that communication is very important.
Yeah. Where is that impulse coming from of the hoverer to constantly be, I don't know, checking in at the work? And where is that coming from?
Honestly, I think this way for my own sanity, that a lot of creative directors have a bunch of tabs open. They might be on many different projects, and they're probably not even hovering over you, or they probably, just have your cursor tapped on, but they're not even really watching you.
If Figma's listening out there, which they probably aren't, but who knows?
Dylan Field, listen to us.
It'd be interesting to think about this dynamic, from a user experience point of view. I mean, which is interesting because we're using the software to create user experiences, but maybe there's a better way than just that simple, like making another artboard and copying and pasting it in.
Speaking of partitions, Chelsea, I want to go back to something you were just talking about.
Okay.
Like, you know, theoretically in the future when you're creative director and you're having these, you know, designated jam sessions so the idea there is that you can let out all your creative ideas unencumbered. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had one of these before on another project where we called them moonshot jams or moonshot sessions, where people can just hang out on Zoom. And if you have something that you want to talk about, you know, call it to attention. Let's all go over there and talk about it. But other than that, everyone's in their own lane, minding their own business, and might have some music going on in the background. But we're all still there with each other. So if you need to have these conversations, erase it now, you know? And I think it works out smoothly because now you're not just going down the rabbit hole and creating things alone and then waiting, you know, hours for that creative director to come around and be ready to actually give you the feedback. And then it ends up being too late, you know? You have these designated moments where we can all be together, we can all talk about it as a team and get shit done.
But just like identifying lanes and encouraging people like, yo, this is your safe space.
Yeah.
Because because going back to what you said, Chelsea, about we have to honor the creative process. It's like going back to your work as an illustrator. As I understand it, you work with oils and acrylics?
I do. Mainly oils. I'm just starting with acrylics.
Oh, I saw. Okay. After this, we'll tell everybody where like they can find you. Okay. I love your work. It is amazing. I was just looking at that piece of the woman with the dress with the hot air balloon and I think it was the Chinese lanterns.
Oh, nice. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. But it's like, I try to imagine it from that perspective. Like, can you imagine if you approach the canvas and you start playing with color and then all of a sudden somebody hops in, you're like, I don't know about that palette. Why are you using oil? Why not acrylics?
I would die. I would literally die. Get out of my studio right now. Please. But no, you're absolutely right. And that's the reason why I started to pursue painting. This is my safe space. And I have, you know, processes that I have in place in which I create. The same thing with design. I have processes in place in which I create. You know, whether you're searching for inspiration, whether you're just, you know, brain dumping some things, whether you're just testing things out to see if it works or not.
I think I can totally relate with that. And I think that as designers, I think it's perfectly acceptable to like speak all the way up to the top and be like, hey, here's how my process works. Feel free to look at it, but let's figure out that place or time when we want things to be reviewed. I think that would help a lot.
So how do you imagine, Chelsea, with, you know, respect to what Jon said and what we've been talking about here, like we're in this Figma world and now some of us are going back to the office. I think you're still going to be working remotely, but like, how do you imagine how this is going to look like going forward?
I think we really just have to communicate, you know, and I'm also speaking to Chelsea as the designers too. You know, we really need to communicate with the creative directors and let them know how it impedes the creative process. And together come up with a way that works best for not just the creative director, but also for the designer as well. So that way things are more productive. Things aren't, you know, you're not getting feedback too early and everybody's working together. So I think that really is like the baseline of it is we're going to have to start communicating with these people and actually let them know how it affects and how it impacts the way that you're designing. So that way they can take into account and like Jon says, you know, realize when you're hovering, back off. Give me some space. Maybe you can come back in.
Yeah. Close that tab.
Yeah. Like take a break. You know, you'll be surprised when you come back. I promise.
Yeah. Go watch some Attack on Titan. Just go just watch some big boys just munch on some little humans, bring your stress levels down.
And that's kind of how the hover feels in a way. It feels like a titan kind of shadowing over it, ready to munch on all of your ideas and destroy it. Okay, we see.
Yeah.
Connected
the dots. So here's something too, like, you know, part of what, you know, our way of, you know, using these like analogies, right? These metaphors to speak to these monsters. One is making sure, like, you know, the monster really is like this separate thing. It's almost like a demon that's possessing, you know, the client or the designer or the boss or whoever, or it's like this cloud that hangs over the whole process, right? Yeah. So like detaching it from the people and speaking to it as that thing, there always seems to be it comes from somewhere, right? So a lot of times this stuff, you know, like we talked about scope creep, when you take away sort of the negative connotations of it, it comes from a place of usually the client saying like, actually, I want to do more, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Egomaniac is really sometimes just a messy way of us figuring out our confidence. So it's not really a bad thing if you think about it that way. For the hover, I actually am kind of curious, like maybe we could talk about that. Like what about it actually is coming from like a really good place? Like if you're putting yourselves in future creative director Chelsea's shoes, that desire to like really like have your eyes on the work that your team is doing, where do you think that might come from?
I think that what you're saying is correct. I feel like it does come from a desire to still be in the process of the project, right? You want to see where it's going and avert any, you know, skewing away from where it needs to be going. So you want to watch. And if something's going wrong, you want to catch it ahead of time and say something. So I can see where it could be coming from that angle. Or maybe you just want to keep tracking along on how the project's going because maybe you have a project manager who's, you know, questioning and asking how things are going. And so you're tracking along that way. That's how I can see it in a good way. But yeah, I do see that, you know, they want to be the overseer and that's okay.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, you know, trying to look at that side is good because it's always going to, a lot of these things they're always going to be there, right? They're not really going away. They're always going to surface, all of these monsters that we're going to keep talking about and uncovering and applying names to. They're always going to be there. And so I think that the best way we're able to break them down and then learn how to like embrace them a little bit is going to help us. So I think like what you're saying, you know, about it coming from a place of someone who's driving a project, wanting to be a part of the process, one, you know, so that they can, you know, catch some things like, hey, I think it actually needs to be like this. That's a good place because they're on it. They're not just like, whatever, do whatever you want. They're like, no, I do have a vision for this. I'm really tight-knit with, you know, the people who are managing the project, with the client. And so they want to make sure that they're helping guide things. And then also just like keeping tabs on the progress to make sure that we're on track with the timeline. Those are really great things. And the more we can be successful at those things as a team, the more successful the projects are going to be, the products, you know, the more impact they're going to make.
You know, what's really funny is when Jon first approached me about the hover and joining you guys on this awesome podcast, I was really nervous because I didn't really think that I would have a point of view to really add. And I was talking to my husband about it. I was like, you know, I'm really nervous. I don't know what to talk about. But as I started talking to him about my own experiences, I realized I had a lot to talk about. I had a lot, you know, especially not yet being a senior in my field. But I do remember that junior stage. I do remember how I feel even now. And really sat down and thought about, well, what would actually work for me? And then from there, I was able to really start to apply the logic and understand how the creative director might be feeling, but also what I might need as well. Now, I'm not saying I have yet to communicate with my own creative directors, but it's on the to-do list.
Yeah, that's
It's,
great.
there's a little bit of fear that comes with, speaking up for yourself and, trying to champion that space for yourself, because you
Yeah.
start to think like, well, do I deserve to say that? Does this come across a little bit confrontational? Would the creative director take this wrong? But like John said, like we're all human. We all come from the same place. We're all creatives at
Yeah.
heart. And there should be a level of empathy between you and your team that should allow you to be able to connect with them without any fear. So I'm talking to myself as well.
No, yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I love it. Well
Yeah.
put.
It's a nice, and it's what I like too is it's just all these things feel actionable, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
It's the kind of thing where you can just like, I mean, hopefully, ideally,
Yeah.
open up these conversations.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it sounds like, Chelsea, it will need to not just be implemented like how does the technology reflect this change? So like what are some ways,
Mhm.
I don't know, like what are some ways that Figma can help? Like like how can they I don't know. I mean,
That's a really great question. That's a really good question. And I don't know, because, the technology and the platforms can do whatever they can do at the end of the day. But what really comes down to the meat of it is the humans that are involved. So, like even now I have my own techniques that work for me, but it doesn't stop it from happening, right? I really think that it's more on that human communication level that needs to be had. I think if we were looking for a quick solution right now, it would be cool if maybe like Figma allowed for people to turn on and off, like hide themselves, right? Because now it doesn't present like I'm watching you and you can see my cursor hovering above you, and you
Right.
can still create freely without feeling like I'm there.
Yeah.
That's something that could work in the short term, but long term, it still needs to come down to you need to communicate how you're feeling.
I would love a hide feature, like even on Google Docs,
Yeah.
or like, and I mean, just like, dude, I'm not, but then it's like, how do you see the work? Oh, I don't know. That's
No, it's interesting. Like you'd see the work. I almost feel like if you're being able to have a feature of like, incognito or whatever, where you're moving around looking at something in Figma, but it's not showing your cursor to your team, might just help, because then you're able to like look at what they're doing, keep tabs on it, but you're not like overwhelming someone by like this little cursor moving around.
Right.
So, yeah, that could be interesting,
Right. Until you see somebody start building some designs or on an artboard and it's like a phantom because they hit themselves.
Maybe that's part of the function. When you're doing that, you're not allowed to touch anything. That could be interesting.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh my God! I can just imagine
Review
some
only,
personalities
like review
having
only.
a
You're not allowed to
nosebleed.
build anything. Yeah.
Oh,
I would like that.
Dylan Field,
better-
are you listening?
Yeah. I think we solved it.
We did it. Let's call it a day, guys. We're done. So let's. Sorry, I'm doing this as I'm ordering DoorDash because I'm realizing it's.
By the time it gets there, yeah.
Dude, I just ordered some Korean barbecue. It's gonna be great.
Ooh.
I'm excited. So okay. Oh, I'm ready. So kind of moving on, I think, to like the last little bit here, closing it out. I think what we're going to be doing from here on out is, opening things with a favorite monster, and then closing things out with a monster slayer,
Yeah.
and still playing within the sandbox of Attack on Titan.
Yay!
Chelsea, walk us through. Who were you thinking as a monster slayer?
Okay. I actually took a couple of days to think through these monsters and monster slayers because I feel like I really had to go back and really process all the villains and monsters I've come across. And there's been so many. But staying in the realm of Attack on Titans, I would definitely have to say Aaron. But a close second was Levi. I digress. Anyways, I would say Aaron. So Aaron was someone who he's the main character of the story, right? He's the protagonist, but he was been affected since he was a child. You know, when the Titans first came and destroyed the wall that his family and everyone that he knew lived in. It happened when he was at a really young age, and it set up the story really.
So brutal.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So brutal.
So okay.
I've seen yeah. It's
so for someone like me who has not ventured into this at all. Give me a little bit of a background on who
a Titan eats his family. So a giant, a kaiju eats his mom.
Right.
Yes.
And just snaps her in half.
He's right there. Right.
And he's right there.
He just made it back to the house after all the destruction, and the Titans are like crashing through, the city and everything like that. Him and his best friend are running back to their childhood home where his mom is at, only to find his house is in destruction. His mom was literally laying in the rubble, barely alive, and is picked up and eaten by a Titan right in front of him. Like, hunch, Titan. It was crazy because you can only imagine how that could traumatize a kid. Like, that's ridiculous. But it made him, very passionate about eradicating the Titans, because he's like, you came in, you destroyed my home, you eat my mom. I gotta kill you at this point, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So he goes and he joins the military with his best friend, and his whole ambition and drive is about defeating the Titans, only to find out that he is also a Titan himself, and it happens out of nowhere.
That's what I saw. Yeah.
It happens out of nowhere. And he's like, whoa, what's going on? And everybody's like, whoa, what's going on? Because this is a threatening creature that's already, that they're like training to fight and everything like that. So he ends up becoming a Titan, and he has to learn how to use these abilities. Because at first, he's repulsed by it. He doesn't want to be a Titan. He kind of wants to die because, that kind of defeats the purpose of his whole goal and his ambition. Yeah. So he takes that time to actually learn what it means to be a Titan, where he got it from, and they do a lot of digging into like how he even became a Titan, which the story's great, so make sure you go watch it. And then he uses that power to, fight alongside of the military, which is amazing. Gotcha. And literally, I don't understand how they would have done it without him, to be honest. But he also finds out like there's other Titans within the wall as well. So now you have like this whole, thing that's happening within the wall, where you have to figure out yourself. You have to figure out who are the snakes in the group, but you're also trying to protect the people, that you grew up with, all the people that live in the wall and stuff like that. Yeah. After a while, this man, he gets so jaded, so tired of the fight, that he's just like, you know what? No. I'm killing anything and everything. I'm kind of tired of all the politics and being the good guy. Like, now I'm going to be me and make some stuff happen. And that's what's happening in this last season. So that's why I really like him, because for me, I love a character with ambition and drive. I really love it because I see myself in that. So the drive and the passion and ambition is like there. It's like a fire, and you're like, yeah, I feel you. I'm right there with you, Aaron. I'm right there with you. So when he wins, we win. And I love that for him. And when he fails, we're like, dang, how can we come back from it? That's how I love him. That's how I love him.
So
I love it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I I would recommend Attack on Titan for anybody who likes Attack on Titan for anybody who likes kaiju stuff and wants to see somebody turn into a kaiju.
Yeah, I need to check this out. This sounds awesome.
It's like it's great. It is, and I need it talking about. I've been on like I got distracted with some sci-fi, but you're reminding me like I need to come back.
Get on it, man. Get on it.
No, you're right.
I do want to recommend another something.
Oh, do it.
Okay,
please. Yeah.
I wanted to stay in the same topic or whatever, but
okay.
Yeah.
The close second for me was this webtoon called Sweet Home. Now, do not watch the Netflix adaptation. Don't do it. But it's so good. The story is so good, and it's about this kid who, he's living by himself because his whole family died, and he's like riddled with guilt. So he's like really depressed, suicidal. Mm-hmm. And there's this whole monsteration attack that's actually happening where people unknowingly, are turning into monsters. Their nose are bleeding. They're turning into monsters. And they turn into a monster of their desire. And so he ends up becoming one as well, but it's like actually fighting back for it. And he's fighting all these monsters, meanwhile trying to protect everybody that's in this high rise that's living there with him, and then also get everybody to safety. Nobody knows what's happening outside of this high rise. And it's a really good story by Carnaby Kim, and I want to say his name is Young Chan on Webtoons. I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a really amazing story, and the Netflix adaptation just does not do it justice whatsoever. So I'm going to look at.
Oh, dude!
I'm sensing
so we
a
have
theme
Attack
here
on Titan,
in these,
and we have
these monster slayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like those.
I mean, listen, I'm like wearing my Godzilla shirt.
We love to see it.
We do. I have my Mothra sweatshirt back here. Anyways, so Chelsea, you've set us up for success.
Yes.
Thank you.
Successful work and successful monster viewing.
Yes.
Seriously, and like I really want to, dude. I want to encourage people who don't watch anime, who don't watch just one episode, 22 minutes of your time, 22 minutes. Watch the first episode of Attack on Titan. That's all.
I'm doing that. I'm going to do that right after this.
Oh, I always recommend it to people.
I'll report back.
I have a whole group of people that I actually talk about what I'm with.
It came back! The spider's back!
Oh my god! This time.
Fuck!
We should probably
this is my shot!
So Brian can go slay the monster known as
I gotta go kill the spider. Oh my god, yeah. Chelsea. Oh wait, Chelsea, where can people find you?
Yes.
Okay.
Before Brian gets
So you can find me on my personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram at Ochello. It's OHCHELLLO, like Jello with 3 L's. Anyways, and you can also find my art Instagram at Chelsea Kinley on Instagram.
Awesome. I can attest. They are wonderful accounts. I follow them, and I think you'll
It's been a pleasure. I have to kill this spider.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been so nice talking to you.
Dude, you as well.
Kill the spider. Kill it.
Okay, I'm going to go kill it.
Bye.